Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is WireDogSec, back with another video for you guys. Today's video, we are going to continue on with TryHackMe. This is the Junior Penetration Tester, Learning Path, Network Security area, and this is the Nmap Live Host Discovery Room. Learn how to use Nmap to discover live hosts using ARP scan, ICMP scan, and TCP UDP ping scan. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Task 1, Introduction. When we want to target a network, we want to find an efficient tool to help us handle repetitive tasks and answer the following questions. First question is, which systems are up? The second question says, what systems are running on, what services are running on these systems? The tool that we will rely on is Nmap. The first question about finding live computers is answered in this room. This room is the first in a series of 4 rooms dedicated to Nmap. The second question about discovering running services is answered in the next Nmap rooms that focus on port scanning. This room is the first of 4 in an Nmap series. These 4 rooms are also part of the network security module. And here's the list of the rooms here. You got the live host discovery, basic port scans, advanced port scans, and the post port scans. The room explains the steps that Nmap carries out to discover the systems that are outlined or online before port scanning. This stage is crucial because trying to port scan offline systems will only waste time and create unnecessary noise on the network. We present the different approaches that Nmap uses to discover live hosts. In particular, we cover ARP scan. This scan uses ARP request to discover live hosts. ICMP scan. This scan uses ICMP request to identify live hosts. 3. TCP UDP ping scan. This scan sends packets to TCP ports and UDP ports to determine live hosts. We also introduce 2 scanners, ARP scan and mass scan, and explain how they overlap with part of Nmap's host discovery. As already mentioned, starting with this room, we will use Nmap to discover systems and services actively. Nmap was created by Gordon Lyon Fyodor, a network security expert and open source programmer. It was released in 1997. Nmap, short for Network Mapper, is a free open source software released under the GPL license. Nmap is an industry standard tool for mapping networks, identifying live hosts, and discovering running services. Nmap's scripting engine can further extend its functionality from fingerprinting services to exploiting vulnerabilities. A Nmap scan usually goes through the steps shown in the figure below, although many are optional and depend on the command line arguments you provide. And here's the steps here that they're talking about. Enumerate targets, discover live hosts, reverse DNS lookup, scan ports, etc. here. Be sure to read that. And let's continue on to task number 2 here. I'm going to talk about subnetworks. Let's review a couple of terms before we move on to the main task. A network segment is a group of computers connected using a shared medium. For example, or instance, the medium can be the Ethernet switch or Wi-Fi access point. In an IP network, a subnet is usually the equivalent of one or more network segments connected together and configured to use the same router. The network segment refers to a physical location or physical connection, while a subnetwork refers to a logical connection. In the following network diagram, we have 4 network segments or subnetworks. Generally speaking, your system would be connected to one of these network segments / subnetworks. A subnetwork, or simply a subnet, has its own IP address range and is connected to a more extensive network via a router. There might be a firewall enforcing security policies depending on each network. And here is a graphic of, or diagram of what they're talking about here, different networks here. The figure above shows 2 types of subnets. You got a /16, which means that the subnet mask has been written as the following: 255.255.0.0. This subnet can have around 65,000 hosts, and then the /24 indicates that the subnet mask is expressed as 255.255.255.0. This subnet can have around 250 hosts. You might want to refer to task 2 and Intro to LAN room if you need to learn more about subnetting, so check that out if you're unfamiliar with that. As part of active reconnaissance, we want to discover more information about a group of hosts or about a subnet. If you are connected to the same subnet, you would expect your scanner to rely on ARP, which is Address Resolution Protocol, queries to discover live hosts. An ARP request or query aims to get the hardware MAC address so that communication over the link layer becomes possible. However, we can use this to infer that the host is online. We revisit link layer in task number 4. If you are in network A, we can use ARP only to discover the devices within a subnet, which is the 10.1.100.0/24. Suppose you are connected to a subnet different from the subnet of the target systems. In that case, all packets generated by your scanner will be routed via the default gateway, which is the router, to reach the systems on another subnet. However, the ARP queries won't be routed and hence cannot cross the subnet router. ARP is a link layer protocol, and ARP packets are bound to their subnet. Click on the View Site button and start the network simulator. We will use the simulator to answer questions in task 2, 4, and 5. So let's go ahead and view site real quick. All right, now we have the site pulled up here, and they want us to configure it like this, and I already have that in here. Computer 6 as the data, send packet. So you guys scroll up to the top, and it wants to determine how many devices the ARP request went to. As you saw there, it went 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 4 is going to be our answer for this particular question. And did computer 6 receive the ARP request? Well, no, it did not. See, it got stopped at the router level. And I'm not sure why this is in here twice, unless this is something. Okay, yeah. Computer 4. There we go. So computer 4 to computer 4, and same information in here, ARP request. So send packet. Let's see what it does here. And let's see here, how many devices can see the ARP request? And looks like it's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4 for that. And it says, did computer 6 reply to the ARP request? Yes, it did. So task number 3 here, I'm going to talk about enumerating targets. We mentioned the different techniques we can use for scanning in task number 1. Before we explain each in detail and put it into use against a live target, we need to specify the targets we want to scan. Generally speaking, you can provide a list, a range, or a subnet. Examples of target specification are the following here: list, and you got machine name, yada yada yada. Example.com, which will scan 3 IP addresses, range 10.11.12.15 to 20. We'll scan 6 IP addresses. And let's see here. You got 10.11.12.15, 16, and dot 20. Then subnet, machine IP /30 will scan 4 IP addresses. So you can also provide a file as input for your list of targets, nmap dash lowercase I, capital L, and then the name of the file that contains those targets. In this case, it's going to be list underscore of underscore host.txt. If you want to check the list of hosts that nmap will scan, you can use nmap dash lowercase s, capital L, then targets. This option will give you a detailed list of the hosts that Nmap will scan without scanning them. However, Nmap will attempt a reverse DNS resolution on all the targets to obtain their names. Names might reveal various information to the penetration tester. If you don't want Nmap to do DNS server, you can add the dash lowercase n option. Launch the attack box. Using the attack box, open the terminal. When the attack box is ready, use Nmap to answer the following. So let's go ahead and start that up and come back to the video. So we have our Nmap command ready to go here, and I'm just gonna hit enter and see what it says. It looks like there are a total of 8 IP addresses in this. So what is the first IP address in Nmap if you were to scan? So this is going to be this one here. So I'm just going to copy this out of here and paste like so. There we go. And the next one says how many IP addresses will Nmap scan show if you do the following here. So if we just let's clear all this out first. And then if hit up arrow, let's backspace out of this stuff here. And let's go ahead and paste this information inside. So as this is running, it'll tell us how many IP addresses were in there. And it says 6400 down there. So let's go ahead and type that in there, 6400. There we go. And let's continue on to task number 4, discovering live hosts. Let's revisit the TCP IP layers shown in the figure next. We will leverage the protocols to discover the live host. Starting from the bottom to top, we can use ARP for link layer, ICMP for network layer, TCP for transport layer, UDP for transport layer. And this is how it looks here. You got the OSI model over here, and you got the TCP IP model on the right. Before we discuss how scanners can use each in detail, we will briefly review these 4 protocols. ARP has one purpose, sending a frame to the broadcast address on the network segment and asking the computer with a specific IP address to respond by providing its MAC address. ICMP has many types. ICMP pings uses type 8 echo and type 0 echo reply. If you want to ping a system on the same subnet, an ARP query should precede the ICMP echo. Although TCP and UDP are transport layers for network scanning purposes, a scanner can send a specifically crafted packet to common TCP or UDP ports to check whether the target will respond. The method is efficient, especially when ICMP echo is blocked. If you have closed the network simulator, click on the view site button in task 2 to display it again. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. View site. Go back down to 4. So we have it open now. Now let's answer some questions here. Send a packet with the following information. And it says computer 1 to computer 3. So change that and then ping request like so. What is the type of packet that computer 1 sent before the ping? So let's go ahead and take a look here. Well, as we read above, we already know that's going to be an ARP request, right? So ARP request. What is the type of packet that computer 1 received before being able to send the ping? Now, if we're paying attention to the network log area here, we can see that there's an ARP request, and the next one should be the ARP response that we got back. So ARP response, if I can spell response, there we go. How many computers responded to the ping request? And let's see if it says it in here. Let's just do it again. So we got, let's see here. So one machine. Send a packet with the following information here from computer 2 to computer 5. So computer 2 to computer 5, and then ping request again. What is the name of the first device that responded to the first ARP request? Let's go and do this. And it looks like the router was the first one to respond. What is the name of the first device that responded to the second ARP request? I believe that was computer 2. No. Okay, let's check this real quick down here. Okay, yeah. I'm the router, send ping request packet from computer 2 to computer 5. So send another ping request. Did it require new ARP request? So let's go ahead and try it again. And answer is going to be no. So task number 5 here, we're going to talk about Nmap host discovery using ARP. And let's see what they say. How would you know which hosts are up and running? It is essential to avoid wasting our time port scanning an offline host or an IP address not in use. There are various ways to discover online hosts. When no host discovery options are provided, Nmap follows the following approaches to discover live hosts. Number 1, when a privileged user tries to scan targets on a local network, Ethernet, Nmap uses ARP request. A privileged user is root, or a user who belongs to the sudoers and can run sudo. When a privileged user tries to scan targets outside the local network, Nmap uses ICMP echo request, TCP ACK for acknowledge to port 80, TCP send synchronize to port 443 and ICMP timestamp request. 3. When an unprivileged user tries to scan targets outside the local network, Nmap resorts to a TCP three-way handshake by sending send packets to ports 80 and 443. Nmap by default uses a ping scan to find live targets, then proceeds to scan live hosts only. If you want to use Nmap to discover online hosts without port scanning the live systems, you can issue this following command: nmap dash lowercase s lowercase n and then the targets. Let's dig deeper to gain a solid understanding of the different techniques used. ARP scan is possible only if you are on the same subnet as the target systems. On an Ethernet and Wi-Fi, you need to know the MAC address of any system before you can communicate with it. The MAC address is necessary for the link layer header. The header contains the source MAC address and the destination MAC address, among other fields. To get the MAC address, the OS sends an ARP query. A host that replies to ARP queries is up. The ARP query only works if the target is on the same subnet as yourself, i.e. on the same Ethernet/Wi-Fi. You should expect to see many ARP queries generated during an Nmap scan of a local network. If you want Nmap only to perform an ARP scan without port scanning, you can use the following command: nmap dash P R dash lowercase s lowercase n targets, where dash P R indicates that you only want an ARP scan. The following example shows Nmap using ARP for host discovery without any port scanning. We run the following command here: nmap dash P R dash lowercase s lowercase n machine IP/24 to discover all the live systems on the same subnet as our target. And this is what it looks like here. It says in this case, the attack box had the IP address of 10.10.210.6 and it used ARP request to discover live hosts on the same subnet. ARP scan works as shown in the figure below. Nmap sends ARP requests to all the target computers, and those online should send an ARP reply back. So if we flip over to the attack box and try this out here, I'm just going to copy and paste. Like so. So if let me do this, clear all this stuff out of here, and then paste. Now while that's running, let's go ahead and continue on with this. Oh, okay, cool, it finished already. If we take a look at the packets generated using a tool such as TCP, dump, or Wireshark, we will see network traffic similar to the figure below. In the figure below, Wireshark displays the source MAC address, destination MAC address, protocol, and query related to each ARP request. The source address is the MAC address of our attack box, while the destination is the broadcast address, as we don't know the MAC address of the target. However, we see the target's IP address, which appears in the info column. In the figure, we can see that we are requesting the MAC addresses of all the IP addresses on the subnet, starting with 10.10.2, 10.1. The host with the IP address we are talking about or asking about will send an our reply with its MAC address, and that's how we will know that is online. And this is what it looks like here. Talking about ARP scans, we should mention a scanner built around ARP queries, which is ARP-scan. It provides many options to customize your scan. Visit the wiki here for more detailed information. One popular choice is ARP scan local net or simply ARP-scan-L, and I've used this before on like exams and stuff like that. So this is very handy. So be sure to put this in your toolbox. All right. If I can spell correctly, just copy and paste this in. And ARP scan is not found. Okay. Well, let's continue on here. This command will send ARP queries to all valid IP addresses on your local network. Moreover, if your local system has more than one interface and you are interested in discovering the live host on one of them, you can specify the interface using the dash I. For instance, sudo arpscan -I ethernet 0-L will send ARP queries for all valid IP addresses on the ETH0 interface. Note that ARPscan is not installed on attack box, which we just discovered here. However, it can be installed using apt install ARPscan. In the example below, we scan the subnet of the attack box using the following here. So let me see if I can install this real quick. Be sure to install this on your machine if you want to do so. Let's go ahead and copy and paste this in here. And looks like it's going to work. So while that's downloading and installing, in the example below, we scanned the subnet attack box using the following here. Since we ran this scan at a time frame close to the previous one, Nmap, yada yada yada, we obtained the same 3 live targets. Should look like the following here. Similarly, the command arp scan will generate many arp queries that we can see using TCP dump, Wireshark, or a similar tool. We can notice that the packet capture for arp scan and nmap-pr-sn yield similar patterns for traffic. Below is the Wireshark output. Once again, there we go. And it looks like it's finally installed, so let's go ahead and clear all this out of here. And let's try this, arpscan-l. There we go, and that's picking up some stuff here. And then it wanted this to try this other stuff here. I'm going to copy this out as soon as this finishes. Or maybe we can just open up a new tab and try it here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put in the attack box IP, which is going to be 10.10.80.81.161. There we go. 256 hosts, yada yada yada. Okay, so this doesn't appear to have worked. Okay, well, let's try it with Nmap and see what it does. Not sure if this is going to work inside of this attack box or not, but we'll find out. All right. Um, okay, so this one seemed to work. I'm not sure what happened with the other command up there. But anyway, let's continue on here. If you have closed the network simulator, click the visit site button, task 2 to display it again. So we'll do that here right now. Flip back over. And let's answer these questions here. So we'll be sending broadcast ARP request packets with the following options from computer 1. So that's already set in there. To computer 1, already set. And it's going to be ARP request. And then data is going to be try all the possible 8 devices other than computer 1 and network, computer 2, computer 3, computer 4, 5, 6, switch 1, 2, and router. How many devices are you able to discover using ARP requests? Hey everybody, just a quick little blurb here. As you can see here, most people that view my channel are not subscribers. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you're enjoying the video, please consider hitting the like button. It helps get me in the algorithm, helps spread the good word out there, helps bring more people and increase our glorious community here. All right, I'm all about helping out others. I know what it's like to come up in cybersecurity or even try to get into cybersecurity and not knowing where to look. I'm just having this channel up so I can help out other people. All right, that's all I got. Okay, so after you've played around with it a bit, you'll come to find out that only 3 devices were able to be discovered. Let's continue on to task number 6 here. And we're going to talk about Nmap host discovery using ICMP, also known as ping. We can ping every IP address on a target network and see who would respond to our ping request with their ping reply. Simple, isn't it? Although this would be the straightforward approach, it is not always reliable. Many firewalls block ICMP echo. New versions of Microsoft Windows are configured with a host firewall that blocks ICMP echo requests by default. However, remember that an ARP query will precede the ICMP request if your target is on the same subnet. To use the ICMP echo request to discover live host, add the option dash capital P capital E. Remember to add dash lowercase s lowercase n if you don't want to follow that with a port scan. As shown in the following figure, an ICMP echo scan works by sending an ICMP echo request and expects the target to reply with an ICMP echo reply if it is online. And this is an example of what it looks like here: echo request and echo reply, host is live. Um, and the example, we scanned the target subnet using the following command here: nmap dash capital P capital E lowercase s lowercase n machine IP slash 24. This scan will send ICMP echo packets to every IP address on the subnet. Again, we expect live host to reply. However, it is wise to remember that many firewalls block ICMP. The output below shows the result of scanning the virtual machine's class C subnet using the following command here from the attack box. So I'm just going to copy and paste this in here and flip back over to the attack box and paste this over like so. And it should look like the screenshot that we can see here once it finishes running. Okay, we got similar information here. Says the scan output shows that 8 hosts are up. Moreover, it shows their MAC address. Generally speaking, we don't expect to learn the MAC addresses of the targets unless they are on the same subnet as our system. The output above indicates that Nmap didn't need to send ICMP packets, as it is confirmed that these hosts are up based on the ARP responses it received. We will repeat the scan. However, this time we will scan from a system that belongs to a different subnet. The results are similar, but without the MAC addresses. And I can see the MAC addresses in my scan here. So let's go ahead and clear all this stuff out of here and copy and paste this over so we can see what they're talking about here. All right, now we should have a similar information as the screenshot here. And it looks like it is still showing us the MAC address. So not sure why it's doing that here. But anyway, let's go ahead and continue on. If you look at the network packets using a tool like Wireshark, you will see something similar to the image below. You can see that we have one source IP address on a different subnet than that of the destination subnet, sending ICMP echo requests to all the IP addresses in a target subnet to see which one will reply. And this is what it looks like here on one side of Wireshark. Because ICMP echo requests tend to be blocked, you might also consider ICMP timestamp or ICMP address mask requests to tell if a system is online. Nmap uses timestamp requests ICMP type 13 and checks whether it will get a timestamp reply ICMP type 14. Adding the dash capital P option tells Nmap to use ICMP timestamps request. As shown in the figure below, you expect live host to reply, and this is what it looks like here. In the following, we run the following command here to discover online computers on the target machine subnet. So let's go ahead and try that real quick. Clear this out. I'm going to copy and paste this over, and this is frozen. Okay, there we go. So clear this out of here, and weird. Okay, let me refresh the page real quick. Capital P, and as you can see here, this is what it looks like here, and they have a screenshot of how it looks in Wireshark. It says similarly, Nmap uses address mask queries ICMP type 17 and checks whether it gets an address mask reply type 18. This scan can be enabled with the option dash capital P capital M. As shown in the figure below, live hosts are expected to reply. They're expected to reply to ICMP address and mask requests. So let's go ahead and clear this out. In an attempt to discover live hosts using ICMP address mask queries, we run the following command, which is nmap dash capital P capital N dash SN machine IP slash 24. Although based on earlier scans, we know that at least 8 hosts are up. This scan returned none. The reason is that the target system or a firewall on the route is blocking this type of ICMP packet. Therefore, it is essential to learn multiple approaches to achieve the same result. If one of the packets is being blocked, we can always choose another to discover the target network and services. So if you want to try it out, we can test it out, but we're not going to get any results as they already said. And let's go ahead and continue on here. Although we didn't get any reply and could not figure out which hosts are online, it is essential to note that this scan sent ICMP address mask request to every valid IP address and waited for a reply. Each ICMP request was sent twice, as we can see in the screenshot below. And this is what it looks like here. Well, obviously, it displayed information down here, so I'm not sure why it said we shouldn't have gotten any results, but let's go ahead and continue on. What is the option required to tell Nmap to use ICMP timestamp to discover live hosts? And that was I believe that was one of the first ones we used. So if we scroll back up here, we can see this, it's this dash pp. So that's what I'm going to use for this answer here. What is the option required to tell Nmap to use ICMP address mask to discover live hosts? And if we scroll back up here to see if they're talking about that, it should be this I believe it's this one here. Yeah, echo request. Okay, so this echo request is dash PE, and then this last one here is dash PM is this address mask query, so it's going to be dash PM. And then what is the option required to use echo request? As we saw, that's going to be the dash PE. And let's move on to task number 7 here. Nmap host discovery using TCP and UDP. TCP send ping. We can send a packet with the send flag set to a TCP port 80 by default and wait for a response. An open port should reply with a SYNAC. A closed port would respond or result in a RST, which is reset. In this case, we only check whether we will receive or get any response to infer whether the host is up. The specific state of the port is not significant here. The figure below is a reminder of how a TCP three-way handshake usually works. You got SYN, SYNAC, and then ACK. TCP port is open. If you want Nmap to use TCP SYN ping, you can do so via the option dash capital PS, followed by the port number, range, list, or a combination of them. For example, dash P capital S21 will target port 21, while this one will target ports 21, 22, 23, yada yada yada, all the way up to 25. Finally, um, dash PS 80, 443, 8080 will target just these three specific ports. Privileged users, root and sudoers can send TCP SYN packets and don't need to complete the three-way handshake even if the port is open. As shown in the figure below, unprivileged users have no choice but to complete the three-way handshake if the port is open. This is what it looks like here. So it'll shows you here how to run the command here, and I'm just going to copy and paste this over like we've been doing. So clear all this stuff out of here and paste it. Now, as that is going, let's continue on here. Let's take a closer look at what happened behind the scenes by looking at the network traffic on Wireshark in the figure below. Technically speaking, since we didn't specify any TCP ports to use in the TCP ping scan, Nmap used common ports in this case. It is TCP port 80 any service listening on port 80 is expected to reply, indirectly indicating that the host is online, and this is what it looks like here. So let's go ahead and continue on. TCP ACK ping. As you have guessed, this sends a packet with an ACK flag set. You must be running Nmap as a privileged user to be able to accomplish this. If you try it as an unprivileged user, Nmap will attempt a three-way handshake. By default, port 80 is used. The syntax is similar to TCP send ping dash capital P capital A should be followed by a port number, range, yada yada yada. For example, consider the following here. This is what it looks like, right? Similar to what we've been doing. If no port is specified, port 80 will be used. The following figure shows that TCP packet with an ACK flag should be set. should get a TCP packet back with the reset flag. The target responds with the reset flag set because TCP packet with the ACK flag is not part of any ongoing connection. The expected response is used to detect if the target host is up, and this is what it looks like here. ACK and then reset packet sent back. TCP port is open or closed. In this example, we run the following command here to discover the online host on the target subnet. We can we can see the TCP ACK ping scan detected 5 hosts as up. So let's go ahead and try to run this. I went ahead and ran this, and this is what it looks like. If we peek at the network traffic, this is what it looks like here. It says will discover many packets with the ACK flag set and sends to port 80 of the target system. Nmap sends each packet twice. The system that don't respond are offline or inaccessible. And then the next one we're going to talk about here is UDP ping. Finally, we can use UDP to discover if the host is online. Contrary to TCP send ping, sending a UDP packet to an open port is not expected to lead to any reply. However, if we send a UDP packet to a closed UDP port, we expect to get an ICMP port unreachable packet. This indicates that the target system is up and available. In the following figure, we see a UDP packet sent to an open UDP port and not triggering any response. However, sending a UDP packet to any closed UDP port can trigger a response indirectly, indicating that the target is online. And this is what it looks like here. The syntax to specify the ports is similar to the TCP SYN ping and the TCP ACK ping. Nmap uses the dash P U. So let's get this ready to go. So I'm going to copy this and clear all this information out of here and paste it over. And it should look something like this. Yep, host is up, 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 up. Let's inspect the UDP packets generated in the following Wireshark screenshot. We notice Nmap sending UDP packets to UDP ports that are most likely closed. The image below shows that Nmap uses an uncommon UDP port to trigger an ICMP destination unreachable, port unreachable error. And this is what it looks like inside of Wireshark. MassScan. On a side note, MassScan uses a similar approach to discover the available systems. However, to finish its network scan quickly, MassScan is quite aggressive with the rate of packets it generates. The syntax is quite similar. Dash lowercase p can be followed by any port number, list, or range. Consider the following examples, and this is what the examples look like here. MassScan is not installed on the attack box, however, it can be installed using the following. And I'm not going to do that here, but if you want to play around with it, be sure to install it on your machine. If it's not there already, then go out and do some testing with the following commands here. Okay, question time. Which TCP ping scan does not require a privileged account? Which TCP ping scan requires a privileged account? And what option do you need to Nmap to run a TCP ping scan on the telnet port? Okay, and this is our solution here. The first one's going to be the TCP SYN ping. That one does not require a privileged account. And which TCP ping scan requires a privileged account? That's going to be the ACK ping. And this last one here, you're going to need the dash PS and the port number of telnet, which is 23. And let's continue on with task number 8, using reverse DNS lookup. Nmap's default behavior is to use reverse DNS online hosts. Because the host names can reveal a lot, this can be a helpful step. However, if you don't want to send such DNS queries, you can use the dash lowercase n to skip the step. By default, Nmap will look up online host. However, you can use the dash R to query the DNS server, even for offline hosts. If you want to use a specific DNS server, you can add the dash DNS servers, the name of the DNS server option. And let's see here. Question time. We want Nmap to issue a reverse DNS lookup for all the possibles hosts on a subnet, hoping to get some insights from the names. What option should we add? And since you want to issue a DNS reverse lookup here, you should use the dash capital R option as stated up here. And let's close this video out with task number 9, summary. You have learned how ARP, ICMP, TCP, and UDP can detect live hosts by completing this room. Any response from a host is an indication that it is online. Below is a quick summary of the command line options for Nmap that we have discovered. And you can see here in the table, you get ARP scan, ICMP echo scan, ICMP time scan, etc., etc. Remember to add the dash lowercase sn if you are only interested in host discovery without port scanning. Omitting the dash lowercase sn will let Nmap default to port scanning the live host. And this is another table of the options here. And let's see here. Ensure you have taken note of all the Nmap options explained in this room. To continue learning about Nmap, please join the Nmap Basics Port Scans, which introduces the basic types of port scans. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at next. And this room is kind of messed up, which is why you keep seeing unresponsive here. I'm not sure what's going on with that. But anyway, that wraps up this video, guys. Hopefully you found this of value. And if you did, please consider hitting that subscribe button if you're new here with the notification bell. Hit the like button if you're enjoying the content. Hit the comment section with your thoughts and opinions. As always, thank you all for watching. Have a nice day, and I will see you later. Hey everybody, this is WireDogSec. Just a quick reminder to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Once you hit the notification bell, be sure to set to all notifications so you know every time I post to the channel, upload a video, all that good stuff. Let's continue to grow our glorious community here. We are in the cyber trenches. We're not just reporting on it. Be sure to check out my channel as well. I have tons of videos that you can see here, over 300 videos ready for you to check out and learn something from. Be sure to review my posts. I'm frequently posting new things to my channel here, including jobs and everything related to that. Also, I have tons of playlists here that you can review, make it more convenient for you. Anyway, happy defending, happy hacking, enjoy the video. Everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is WireDogSec, and I'm back with another video. We are going to continue on with TryHackMe. This is the Junior Penetration Tester Learning Path, the Network Security module, and this is the Nmap Basic Port Scans room. Learn in depth how Nmap TCP Connect Scan, TCP Send Port Scan, and UDP Port Scan work. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Task 1, Introduction. This room is the second in the Nmap series, part of the Introduction to Network Security module. This is what we're looking at so far. Number 1 is the live host discovery, basic port scans. Advanced port scans will be the next one, and then post port scans will be the one after that. In the previous room, we focused on discovering online systems. So far, we have covered 3 steps of Nmap scan, enumeration, discovery, and the reverse DNS lookup here. And here are some steps listed out. The next step would be checking which ports are open and listening and which ports are closed. Therefore, in this room and the next one, we are focusing on port scanning and the different types of port scans used by Nmap. This room explains TCP Connect port scan, TCP Send port scan, and UDP port scan. Moreover, we discussed the different options to specify the ports, the scan rate, and the number of parallel probes. I already launched the attack box here. So you will launch different types of scans against the target VM. So gain a solid understanding of Nmap basics. And let's go ahead and continue on with task number 2, TCP and UDP ports. In the same sense that an IDP address specifies a host on a network, among many others, a TCP port or UDP port is used to identify a network service running on that host. A server provides the network service and it adheres to a specific network protocol. Examples include providing time, responding to DNS queries, and serving web pages. A port is usually linked to a service using that specific port number. For instance, an HTTP server would bind to TCP port 80 by default. Moreover, if the HTTP server supports SSL/TLS, it would listen on TCP port 443. TCP ports 80 and 443 are the default ports for HTTP and HTTPS. However, the web server administrator might choose other port numbers if necessary. Furthermore, no more then one service can listen on any TCP or UDP port on the same IP address. At the risk of oversimplification, we can classify ports in two states here, and they have them listed out here. Open port indicates that there is a service running on that port or listening on that port. Closed port indicates that there's no servers listening on that port. However, in practical situations, we need to consider the impact of firewalls. For instance, a port might be open, but a firewall might be blocking the packets. Therefore, Nmap considers the following 6 states, and they have them listed out here. Open indicates that a service is listening on the specified port. Closed indicates that no service is listening on the port, although the port is accessible. By accessible, we mean that it's reachable and is not blocked by a firewall or other security appliances/programs. Filtered means that Nmap cannot determine if the port is open or closed because the port is not accessible. The state is usually due to a firewall preventing Nmap from reaching that port. Nmap's packets may be blocked from reaching the port. Alternatively, the responses are blocked from reaching Nmap's host. Unfiltered means that Nmap cannot determine if the port is open or closed. Although the port is accessible, the state is encountered when using an ACK -S capital A open pipe filter. This means that Nmap cannot determine whether the port is open or filtered, then closed pipe filtered. This means that Nmap cannot decide whether a port is closed or filtered. All right, so let's answer some questions here. Which service uses UDP port 53 by default? Well, that is going to be DNS for port 53. Which service uses TCP port 22 by default? Well, that's going to be SSH for secure shell. How many port states does Nmap consider? And as we already read through that, it's going to be 6 of them. So there we go here. And which port state is most interesting to discover as a penetration tester? And that is going to be, of course, open. Those are the ones you want to target. And let's go to task number 3 here. We're going to talk about TCP flags. Nmap supports different types of TCP port scans. To understand the difference between these port scans, we need to review the TCP header. The TCP header is the first 24 bytes of a TCP segment. The following figure shows the TCP header as defined in our RFC 793. This figure looks sophisticated at first. However, it is pretty simple to understand. In the first row, we have the source TCP port number and the destination port number. We can see that the port number is allocated 16 bits, 2 bytes. In the second and third rows, we have the sequence number and the acknowledgement number. Each row has 32 bits, 4 bytes allocated, with 6 rows total making up 24 bytes. And here's what it looks like here. So take a second to review this, and we're going to continue on here. And in particular, we need to focus on the flags that Nmap can set or unset. We have highlighted the TCP flags in red. Setting a flag bit means setting its value to 1 from left to right. The TCP header flags are the following here. I'm just going to skim over these here. Number 1 is urge for urgent flag, indicates that the urgent pointer filed is significant. Number 2, ACK acknowledgement flag, indicates that the acknowledgement number is significant. PSH, which is push flag, asking TCP to pass the data to the application promptly. RST is reset flag, is used to reset the connection. SYN is a synchronized flag, is used to initiate a TCP 3-way handshake and synchronize sequence numbers with other hosts. And the FIN, the sender has no more data to send. So take a moment to familiarize yourself with these, and let's continue on to the questions below. What 3 letters represent the reset flag? Well, we can see that it's up here. Is RST for reset. Which flag needs to be set when you indicate a TCP connection? First packet of the TCP 3-way handshake. Well, we know that's going to be the SYN flag here. So let's go ahead and put that in there. And we're going to get into some practical application here in task number 4, TCP connect scan. So let's go ahead and fire this bad boy up. And let's go ahead and read through some of this stuff here. TCP connect scan works by completing the 3-way handshake and standard TCP connection establishment. The client sends a TCP packet with SYN flag set, and the server responds with SYN-ACK and the port. If the port is open, finally, the client completes the 3-way handshake by sending the ACK, and you can see it here in this fancy infographic or graphic here. You got SYN, and then SYN-ACK, and then ACK back. TCP port is open. We are interested in learning whether TCP port is open, not establishing a TCP connection. Hence, the connection is torn as soon as its state is confirmed by sending a reset ACK. You can choose to run a TCP connect scan using S, capital T. Now, you might need to be careful with these SYNAC scans or these SYN scans because they're considered to be half open. And if you're running these against maybe old equipment or such, maybe that old equipment doesn't have the capability to resolve these types of scans, right? So it may tip over some things in there. So be aware of that. And let's continue on here to talk about some other things. And this is what the TCP connect scan looks like. You got send, ACK, ACK, and then reset ACK here. So let's go ahead and continue on. It is important to note that if you are not a privileged user, root, or sudoer, a TCP connect scan is the only possible option to discover open TCP ports. So that's important to remember here. In the following Wireshark packet capture window, we see Nmap sending TCP packets with send flag set to various ports. You got 256, 443, 143, and so on. By default, Nmap will attempt to connect to 1,000 or to the 1,000 most common ports. A closed TCP connection port, a closed TCP port responds to a send packet with the reset ACK to indicate that it is not open. This pattern will repeat for all the closed ports as we attempt to initiate a three-way handshake with them. And this is what they look like here inside of Wireshark. We noticed that the port 143 is open, so it replied with SYNAC, and Nmap completed the three-way handshake by sending an ACK. The figure below shows all the packets exchanged between our Nmap host and the target system's port 143. The first three packets are the TCP three-way handshake being completed. Then the fourth packet tears it down with reset ACK packet. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one here real quick. All right. To illustrate the -S capital T TCP connect scan, the following command example returned a detailed list of the open ports, and this is what it looks like here. And we're going to take a look at this here in a minute on the attack box. Note that we use the -F to ensure or to enable fast mode and decrease the number of scanned ports from 1,000 to 100 most common ports. It is worth mentioning that the -R option can be added to added to scan the ports in consecutive order instead of a random order. This option is useful when testing whether ports open in a consistent manner. For instance, when a target boots up, launch the machine, and then execute this following command here. So I'm going to copy it via the terminal. A new service has been installed in this VM since our last scan. Which port number was closed in the scan above but is not open on this VM target? Okay, so let's see here. It says a new service was installed and open. So if we compare these two together, we're going to see that the looks like POP 3110 is open here. So let's go and type that in here. And it says, what is Nmap's guess about the newly installed service? Well, it says it thinks it's POP3. So there you go, which is related to email. Let's continue on to this next one here. We're going to talk about TCP send scan. And I'm going to go ahead and kill this machine here and then start up this next one down here. Now, while that's loading up, let's go ahead and read through this stuff here. Unprivileged users are limited to connect scan. However, the default scan mode is send scan, and it requires a privileged user, root, sudo user to run it. Send scan does not need to complete the TCP three-way handshake. Instead, it tears down the connection once it receives a response from the server. Because we didn't establish a TCP connection, this decreases the chances of the scan being logged. We can select this scan type by using the -s and capital S option. The figure below shows the TCP send scan works without completing the TCP handshake. And this is what it looks like here. You got the send, and then it sends back a send ACK, and then it sends back a reset. So he doesn't send that ACK back, right? It's half open. And let's go ahead and continue on here. The following screenshot from Wireshark shows a TCP send scan. The behavior in the case of closed TCP ports is similar to that of the TCP connect scan. And this is what it looks like here. All right. To better see the difference between the two scans, consider the following screenshot. In the upper half of the following figure, we can see a TCP scan ST traffic. Any open TCP port will require Nmap to complete the TCP three-way handshake before closing the connection. In the lower half of the following figure, we see how a send scan does not need to complete the TCP three-way handshake. Instead, Nmap sends a reset packet once a SYNAC packet is received. And here we go here to compare them. All right. And let's see here. It says TCP send scan is the default scan mode, which you already know. You need to be a privileged user. So running as root or sudo, it has successfully discovered the open ports you found earlier with the TCP connect scan, yet no TCP connection was fully established from the target. And answer the questions below. We're going to run this command, and we're going to see what it does here. And I'm going to paste this over, and let's see what this looks like. All right, now the new port looks like it's going to be this 6667 down here. So let's go ahead and type that in there. And it says, what is Nmap's guess of the service? Well, that's going to be IRC, so what it thinks it is. So there we go. Hey everybody, just a quick little blurb here. As you can see here, most people that view my channel are not subscribers. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you're enjoying the video, please consider hitting the like button. It helps get me in the algorithm, helps spread the good word out there, helps bring more people and increase our glorious community here. All right, I'm all about helping out others. I know what it's like to come up in cybersecurity or even try to get into cybersecurity and not knowing where to look. I'm just having this channel up so I can help out other people. All right, that's all I got. Task number 6, we're going to be talking about the UDP scan. UDP is a connectionless protocol, and hence it does not require any handshake for connection establishment. We cannot guarantee that a service listening on a UDP port would respond to our packets. However, if a UDP port packet is sent to a closed port, and ICMP port unreachable error type 3 code 3 is returned. You can select UDP scan using the -SU option, however, you can combine it with another TCP scan. The following figure shows that if we send a UDP packet to a UDP or an open UDP port, we cannot expect any reply in return. Therefore, sending a UDP packet to an open port won't tell us anything. And here's an example, no response expected. However, as shown in the figure below, we expect to get an ICMP packet of type 3 destination unreachable and code 3 port unreachable. In other words, the UDP ports that don't generate any response are the ones that Nmap will state as open, and that's what this looks like here. In the Wireshark capture below, we can see that every closed port will generate an ICMP packet, destination unreachable, port unreachable, and this is what it looks like. All right. Launching a UDP scan against this Linux server proved valuable, and indeed, we learned that port 111 is open. On the other hand, Nmap cannot determine whether UDP port 68 is open or filtered, and that's what they look like here. Okay, we already launched the machine, so we're going to run this command against the target box. I'm going to copy and paste this out of here. It says a new service has been installed since the last scan. What is the UDP port that is now open? So let's go ahead and do it this way. We got that -F in there too, so we're going to do a fast scan. So it's going to scan the first 100 ports, and then this -V is verbose, which is why you're seeing this additional information here. Now, while that's going on, let's see here. What service is the name? According to Nmap. All right, so let's fast forward through this. Looks like it finally finished. And let's answer these questions here. What is the UDP port that is now open? So if we go ahead and compare these lists, it looks like port 53 is now open. So we're going to type that in there, and it looks like the domain is going to be the service. And let's go ahead and go to task 7 here. Fine-tuning, scope, and performance. You can specify the ports you want to scan instead of the default 1000 ports. Specifying the ports is intuitive by now. Let's see some examples, and this is what it looks like here. So port list, and they are targeting port 22, ports 80, and port 443. And this is how you do a range here, -P, and then the port numbers. So they're doing ports 1 through 1023. Says while ports 20 to 25 will scan ports between 20 and 25, right? So pretty simple to figure out how these ports work for if you want to target specific ports. If you want to target all these ports, then you can do this -P-, right? It'll scan all 65,535 ports. And once again, use -F if you want to do just the most common 100 ports. That stands for like the fast scan. And then --top -ports 10 will check the 10 most common ports. You can control the scan timing using the -T option, 0 to 5. 0 is going to be the slowest, paranoid by, while 5 is the opposite, it's going to be the fastest. Now, you have to be careful with these because sometimes if you scan too fast, then you might not get accurate results back, and you may also knock something over. According to Nmap manual, there are 6 templates. You got paranoid, sneaky, polite, normal, aggressive, and insane. To avoid IDS alerts, you might consider 0 or 1. For instance, 0 scans one port at a time and waits 5 minutes between sending each probe, so you can guess how long scanning one target would take to finish. If you don't specify any timing, Nmap uses the normal, which is 3. Note that 5 is the most aggressive in terms of speed. However, this can affect the accuracy of the scan results due to the increased likelihood of packet loss. Now, didn't I just say that? Note that the T4 is often used during CTFs and when learning to scan on practice targets, whereas T1 is often used during real engagements where stealth is more important. So I would recommend using which one works for you in your situation, right? That's why they have all these different options in there. Use the one that works best in your situation. Alternatively, you can choose to control packet rate using the -min-rate, and then a number, and then max-rate number. For example, max rate 10 to or max rate equals 10 ensures your scanner is not sending more than 10 packets per second. And then you got the control the probing parallelization using the -min-parallelism, then the number of probes, number of probes, and max parallelism, number of probes. Nmap probes the target to discover which hosts are live and which ports are open. Probing parallelization specifies the number of such probes that can be run in parallel. For instance, -min-parallelism equals 512 pushes Nmap to maintain at least 512 probes in parallel. These 512 probes are related to the host discovery and open ports. This is very interesting information here. I don't really use these features down here, but I have used the actual timing stuff here, as they're talking about here, to make my scans faster or slower, and then of course the ports and such. All right, let's get some answers. What is the option to scan all the TCP ports between 5000 and 5050? Well, we know that we're going to need to use the range for this, right? So it's going to be -P and then 5000 to 5500, like so. Then how can you ensure that Nmap will run at least 64 probes in parallel? And that would be similar to the one up here. So we're just going to copy this and then replace that 512 with 64. What option would you add to make Nmap very slow and paranoid? Remember, that's going to be the -T, and very slow is going to be 0. Right? Because you want to be as stealthy as possible in this case. All right, let's wrap this video up with the task 8 summary. Let me go ahead and close this down. All right, this room covered 3 types of scans. You got TCP connection scan, TCP send scan, and UDP scan, and these are the corresponding example commands, what they look like. These scan types should get you started discovering running TCP and UDP services on a target host. And here's the other options we went over, right? Remember the -P- is the all ports, and then you got the ranges here. You got -F, which is the fast scan, 100 most common ports, and you can see the rest down here as we already went over some of this stuff. So familiarize yourself with all this Nmap knowledge we're getting in here because you may come across this in your career. Maybe you'll do this on a CTF or maybe even in the real world. But let's see here. Ensure you have taken note of all the scan options in this room. It's time to learn more advanced port scanning techniques by joining the Nmap Advanced Port Scans room, and that is the end of the video. All right, folks, if you found this video of value and you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button with the notification bell. Hit the like button if you're enjoying the content. Comment below your thoughts and opinions. As always, thank you all for watching. Have a nice day. I will see you later. Hey everybody, this is WireDogSec. Just a quick reminder to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Once you hit the notification bell, be sure to set to all notifications so you know every time I post to the channel, upload a video, all that good stuff. Let's continue to grow our glorious community here. We are in the cyber trenches. We're not just reporting on it. Be sure to check out my channel as well. I have tons of videos. You can see here over 300 videos ready for you to check out and learn something from. Be sure to review my posts. I'm frequently posting new things to my channel here, including jobs and everything related to that. Also, I have tons of playlists here that you can review, make it more convenient for you. Anyway, happy defending, happy hacking, enjoy the video. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is WireDogSec, back with another video. Today's video, we are going to continue on with TryHackMe. This is the Junior Penetration Tester Learning Path Network Security module in the Nmap Advanced Port Scans room. Learn advanced techniques such as null, fin, Xmas, and idle zombie scans, spoofing, in addition to firewall and intrusion detection system and evasion. Now let's go ahead and dive into it. Task 1, Introduction. This room is the third in the Nmap series, part of the Introduction to Network Security module. In this case, this is what we've been going through so far, if you've been paying attention and following on with me. In the first two rooms, we learned about live host discovery and basic port scans, and we're following this path here. Live host discovery was the first one, then basic port scans was the second one. Third one that we're currently on is the advanced port scans, and then the last one is going to be post port scans. In Nmap basic port scans, we covered TCP flags and reviewed the TCP three-way handshake. To initiate a connection, TCP requires the first packet to have the SYN flag set. Consequently, we can tell if a TCP port is open based on the response we receive. Security researchers and hackers contemplated the TCP flags shown in the figure below and explained in the previous room and started to experiment. They wanted to know what would happen if we send a TCP packet, which is not part of any ongoing TCP connection with one or more flags set. As you can see here, the TCP header RFC793, and this is what it looks like here. For instance, an ACK flag is set when you want to acknowledge received data. An ACK scan is like trying to acknowledge data that was neither sent nor received in the first place. Consider this simple analogy. Someone coming to you out of nowhere to tell you, "Yes, I hear you. Please continue," when you haven't said anything. This room explains advanced types of scans and scan options. Some of these scan types can be useful against specific systems, while others are useful in particular network setups. We will cover the following scan types. We've got null scan, fin, Xmas, Maimon, ACK, window, custom. Moreover, we will cover the following: spoofing IP, spoofing MAC, decoy scan, fragmented packets, and idle/zombie scan. We will discuss options and techniques to evade firewalls and IDS systems. We also cover options to get more verbose details from Nmap. Launch the attack box, which I already have it running. So I'm going to hit complete here, and let's continue on to task number 2 here. TCP null scan, fin scan, and Xmas scan. Let's start with the following 3 types of scan: null scan, fin scan, and Xmas scan. Null scan. The null scan does not set any flag. All 6 flag bits are set to 0. You can choose this scan by using the -SN option. A TCP packet with no flag set will not trigger any response when it reaches an open port as shown in the figure below. Therefore, from Nmap's perspective, a lack of reply in a null scan indicates that either the port is open or a firewall is blocking the packet. And this is what it looks like here. However, we expect the target server to respond with a reset packet if the port is closed. Consequently, we can use the lack of reset response to figure out the ports that are not closed, open, or filtered. And this is what that looks like. Below is an example of a null scan against a Linux server. The null scan we carried out was successfully identified the 6 open ports on the target system. Because the null scan relies on the lack of a response to infer that the port is not closed, it cannot indicate with certainty that these ports are open. There's a possibility that the ports are not responding due to a firewall rule. And this is what it looks like. This is the results they got back from that. It says note that many Nmap options require root privileges. Unless you are running Nmap as root, you will need to use the sudo as in the example above using the -sn option. So I'm just going to go up here and show split the view because we're probably going to have to do this here in a second. And let's just open up a new tab here and just copy and paste. I'm already logged in as root, as you can see there with the hashtag. And I'm going to paste this in there. Now let's continue on here. Fin scans. The fin scan needs a TCP packet with the fin flag set. You can choose this scan type using the -sf option. Similarly, no response will be sent if the TCP port is open. Again, Nmap cannot be sure if the port is open or if a firewall is blocking the traffic related to the TCP port, and this is what it looks like here. However, the target system should respond with a reset if the port is closed. Consequently, we will be able to know which ports are open and use this knowledge to infer the ports that are open or filtered. It's worth noting that some firewalls will silently drop the traffic without sending a reset. And this is what it looks like here. Below is an example of a fin scan against a Linux server. The result is quite similar to the result we obtained earlier using a null scan. And I'm not sure if this is going to work or not, so I'm going to kill this. And I'm going to try this option here. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this over like so. And this is what it looks like here. You can see filtered, open, yada, yada, yada. And Xmas scan. The Xmas scan gets its name after Christmas tree lights. An Xmas scan sets the fin, push, and urge flags simultaneously. You can select the Xmas scan with the option SX. Like the null scan, the fin scan, if a reset packet is received, it means that the port is closed. Otherwise, it will be reported as open filtered. The following two figures show the case when the TCP port is open and the case when the TCP port is closed, and this is what it looks like here. The output below shows an example of a Christmas scan against a Linux server. The obtained results are pretty similar to that of the null scan and the fin scan, and this is what it looks like here in the screenshot. All right, let's continue on here. One scenario where these three scan types can be efficient is when scanning a target behind a stateless, non-stateful firewall. A stateless firewall will check if the incoming packet has the send flag set to detect a connection attempt. Using a flag combination that does not match the send packet makes it impossible to deceive the firewall and reach the system behind it. However, a stateful firewall will practically block all such crafted packets and render this kind of scan useless. All right, question time. In a null scan, how many flags are set to 1? Now with this null scan, I believe it said there weren't any of them, right? So it's going to be 0. In a fin scan, how many flags are set to 1? And that's going to be 1 because it's the fin flag, right? And Xmas scan, how many flags are set? And that's going to be all of them. So I believe that was 6. No, it was not 6. Okay. So if we go back up here, and the correct answer would be, okay, there we go. 1, 2, and 3. So 3 should be this answer. I don't know where I got 6 from, but 3 is going to be set here. So type that in there. Start the VM, which I've already done. Once both are ready, open the terminal, attack box. Use Nmap to launch a fin scan against the target VM. How many ports appear as open filtered? And we have that in here. Let's see here. Open filtered. So let's count them. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is going to be our answer for this one. Repeat your scan launching a null scan against the target VM. How many ports appear as open and filtered? So let me clear all this out of here. And the null scan is going to be this one here. I don't know how long this is going to take, so let's fast forward. Hey everybody, just a quick little blurb here. As you can see here, most people that view my channel are not subscribers. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you're enjoying the video, please consider hitting the like button. It helps get me in the algorithm, helps spread the good word out there, helps bring more people and increase our glorious community here. All right, I'm all about helping out others. I know what it's like to come up in cybersecurity or even try to get into cybersecurity and not knowing where to look. I'm just having this channel up so I can help out other people. All right, that's all I got. All right, the scan finished and it looks like 7 are showing as open filtered. Let's go ahead and continue on to task number 3 here, and we're going to talk about the TCP Maimon scan. Uriel Maimon first described the scan in 1996. In the scan, the FIN and ACK bits are set. The target should send a reset packet as a response. However, certain BSD-derived systems drop the packet if it is an open port, exposing the open ports. This scan won't work on most targets encountered in modern networks. However, we include it in this room to better understand the port scanning mechanism and the hacking mindset. To select this type of scan, use the -SM option. Most target systems respond with a reset packet regardless of whether the TCP port is open. In such a case, we won't be able to discover the open ports. The figure below shows the expected behavior in the cases of both open and closed TCP ports, and this is what it looks like here. In the console, output below is an example of the TCP Maven scan against a Linux server. As mentioned, because open ports and closed ports are behaving the same way, the Maven scan could not discover any open ports on the target system. And this is what their results are. So I'm going to copy and paste this over like so. We got the same results. So let's go ahead and continue here. Actually, we did not get the same results. It says if it's really up, it's blocking our ping, so we didn't get anything back, whereas they did. This type of scan is not the first scan one would pick to discover a system. However, it is important to know about it as you don't know when it could come in handy. In the Mammon scan, how many flags are set, and that's going to be 2 because you're talking about you're setting the fin and the ACK. So there you go. And let's continue on to task number 4 here. And it looks like we need to terminate this machine and start up this new one down here. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Scroll past it. There we go. This task will cover how to perform a TCP ACK, scan a TCP window scan, and how to create your own custom flag scan. TCP ACK scan. Let's start with the TCP ACK scan. As the name implies, an ACK scan will send a packet with the flag set. Use the -SA option to choose the scan. As we show in the figure below, the target would respond to the ACK and reset regardless of the state of the port. This behavior happens because a TCP packet with the ACK flag set should be sent only in response to a received TCP packet to acknowledge the receipt of some data. Unlike our case, hence, this scan won't tell us whether the target port is open in a simple setup, and this is what it looks like here. In the following example, we scanned the target VM before installing a firewall on it. As expected, we couldn't learn which ports were open, and that's the results they got. So I'm going to go ahead and run it on my side of things here. Let's continue on here while that's going. This kind of scan would be helpful if there is a firewall in front of the target. Consequently, based on which ACK packets result in responses, you will learn which ports were not blocked by the firewall. In other words, this type of scan is more suitable to discover firewall rule sets and configuration. After setting up the target VM with a firewall, we repeat the ACK scan. This time we received some interesting results as seen in the console output below. We have 3 ports that aren't being blocked by the firewall. This result indicates that the firewall is blocking all other ports except these ports. And that's what it looks like here. So let's go ahead and continue on. Window scan. Another similar scan is the TCP window scan. The TCP window scan is almost the same as the ACK scan. However, it examines the TCP window field of the reset packets return. On specific systems, this can reveal that the port is open. You can select this type of scan with the -SW. As shown in the figure below, we expected to get a reset packet in reply to our uninvited ACK packets, regardless of whether the port is open or closed, and this is what it looks like here. Similarly, launching a TCP window scan against a Linux system with no firewall will not provide much information, as we can see in the console output below. The results of the Windows scan against a Linux server with no firewall didn't give any extra information compared to the ACK scan executed earlier. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this over like so. And you can see that in the results here, what they're talking about. However, as you expect, if we repeat our TCP window scan against a server behind a firewall, we expect to get more satisfying results. In the console output below, the TCP window scan pointed that 3 ports are detected as closed. This is in contrast with the ACK scan that labeled the same 3 ports as unfiltered. Although we know that these ports are not closed, we realize they responded differently, indicating that the firewall does not block them. And this is their results here. Custom scan. If you want to experiment with a new TCP flag combination beyond the built-in TCP scan types, you can do so using the following -- scan flags. For instance, if you want to set, send, reset, and fin simultaneously, you can do so using the -- scan flags, then RST, SYN, and then fin. As shown in the figure below, if you develop your custom scan, you need to know how the different ports will behave to interpret the results in different scenarios correctly. And that's what this looks like here, a custom scan. Finally, it is essential to note that the ACK scan and the Windows scan were very efficient at helping us map out the firewall rules. However, it is vital to remember that just because a firewall is not blocking a specific port, it does not necessarily mean that a service is listening on that port. For example, there is possibility that the firewall rules need to be updated to reflect recent service changes. Hence, ACK and Windows scans are exposing the firewall rules, not the services. In TCP Windows scan, how many flags are set? So I believe that's going to be 1. And you decided to experiment with a custom TCP scan that has the reset flag set. What would you add after the scan flags? Well, you're going to add RST for reset. All right, the VM received an update to its firewall rule set. A new port is now allowed by the firewall. After you make sure that you have terminated the VM from task 2, start the VM for this task, launch the attack box. You haven't already done that already. Once both are ready, open the terminal on the attack box and use Nmap to launch an ACK against the target VM. How many ports appeared unfiltered? And you can see that there are 4 ports that appear unfiltered. So that's going to be the answer to that one. And then what is the new port number that appeared? The new port number is going to be 443. And it says that it thinks that it's HTTPS that's running on there. But if you navigate to it via Firefox or a web browser, you can see that there's nothing there, right? So that's going to be a no. And let's continue on to task number 5 here, where we're going to be talking about spoofing and decoys. In some network setups, you will be able to scan a target system using a spoofed IP address and even a spoofed MAC address. Such a scan is only beneficial in a situation where you can guarantee to capture the response. If you try to scan a target from some random network using a spoofed IP address, chances are you won't have any response routed to you, and the scan results could be unreliable. The following figure shows the attacker launching the command Nmap-S spoofed IP. Consequently, Nmap will craft all the packets using the provided source IP address, spoofed IP. The target machine will respond to the incoming packet, sending the replies to the destination IP address. For the scan to work and give accurate results, the attacker needs to monitor the network traffic to analyze the replies, and that's what this looks like here. In brief, scanning with a spoofed IP address is 3 steps. 1. Attacker sends a packet with a spoofed source IP address to the target machine. 2. Target machine replies to the spoofed IP address as the destination. 3. Attacker captures the replies to figure out open ports. In general, you expect to specify the network interface using the -E and to explicitly disable ping scan using the -PN. Therefore, instead of nmap-s spoofed IP, you will need to issue the nmap-e network interface-pn-s to tell nmap explicitly which network interface to use and not to expect to receive a ping reply. It is worth repeating that this scan will be useless if the attacker system cannot monitor the network for responses. When you are on the same subnet as the target machine, you should be able to spoof your MAC address as well. You can specify the source MAC address using the --spoof-MAC and then spoofed MAC address. These address spoofing is only possible if the attacker and the target machine are on the same Ethernet 802.3 network or the same Wi-Fi 802.11. Spoofing only works in a minimal number of cases where certain conditions are met. Therefore, the attacker might resort to using decoys to make it more challenging to be pinpointed. The concept is simple. Make the scan appear to be coming from many IP addresses so that the attacker's IP address would be lost among them. As we see in the figure below, the scan of the target machine will appear to be coming from 3 different sources, and consequently, the replies will go to the decoys as well, and that's what this looks like here. Nmap-D, then decoy me, decoy to the machine IP. You can launch a decoy scan by specifying a specific or random IP address after the -D. For example, and that's what it looks like here, we'll make the scan of 10.10.124.64 appear as coming from the IP addresses 10.10.0.1, yada yada yada, and then the LME to indicate that your IP address should appear in the third order. Another example command would be the following here, where the third and fourth source IP addresses are assigned randomly, while the fifth source is going to be the attacker's IP address. In other words, each time you execute the later command, you would expect two new random IP addresses to be the third and fourth decoy sources. What do you need to add to the command sudo nmap 10.10.124.64 to make the scan appear as if it's coming from the source IP 10.10.10.11, and that's going to be the, remember the -D option, right? So you want to set that, wait a second. No, it's going to be the capital S. That's what they said up here, right? Yeah, capital S. You want to spoof that IP. And then it's going to be the 10.10.10.11. Like so. What do you need to add to the command to make the scan appear as coming from source IP addresses in addition to your address? This is what it looks like here. -D 10.10.20.21, 10.10.20.28, and then the me at the end. Task number 6, fragmented packets. A firewall is a piece of software or hardware that permits packets to pass through or blocks them. It functions based on firewall rules summarized as blocking all traffic with exceptions or allowing all traffic with exceptions. For instance, you might block all traffic to your server except those coming to your web server. A traditional firewall inspects at least the IP header and the transport layer header. A more sophisticated firewall would also try to examine the data carried by the transport layer. An IDS is intrusion detection system, inspects network packets for select behavioral patterns or specific content signatures. It raises an alert whenever a malicious rule is met. In addition to the IP header and transport layer header in IDS, would inspect the data contents in the transport layer and check if it matches any malicious pattern. How can you make it less likely for a traditional firewall/IDS to detect your Nmap activity? It is not easy to answer this. However, depending on the type of firewall/IDS, you might benefit from dividing the packet into smaller packets. Fragmented packets. Nmap provides the option dash little f to fragment packets. Once chosen, the IP data will be divided into 8 bytes or less, adding another dash lowercase f dash. You can do it two ways here, as they have specified here. We'll split the data into 16-byte fragments instead of 8. You can change the default value by using the dash dash MTU. However, you should always choose a multiple of 8. To properly understand fragmentation, we need to look at the IP header in the figure below. It might look complicated at first, but we notice that we know most of its field. In particular, notice the source address taking 32 bits, 4 bytes, on the fourth row, while the destination address is taking another 4 bytes on the fifth row. The data that we will fragment across multiple packets is highlighted in red. To aid in reassembly on the recipient side, IP addresses uses the identification ID and fragment offset shown on the second row of the figure below, and that's what that looks like here. Let's compare running nmap-ss and this other one here. As you know by now, this will use stealth TCP scan on port 80. However, in the second command, we are requesting nmap's fragments the IP packets. In the first two lines, we can see an ARP query. In response, Nmap issued an ARP query because the target is on the same Ethernet. The second two lines show a TCP send ping and a reply. The fifth line is the beginning of the port scan. Nmap sends a TCP send packet to port 80. In this case, the IP header is 20 bytes and the TCP header is 24 bytes. Note the following, or the minimum size of the TCP header is 20 bytes, and that's what that looks like here. With fragmentation requested via a dash lowercase f, the 24 bytes of the TCP header will be divided into multiples of 8 bytes, with the last fragment containing 8 bytes or less of the TCP header. Since 24 is divisible by 8, we got 3 IP fragments. Each has 20 bytes of IP header and 8 bytes of TCP header. We can see the 3 fragments between the 5th and the 7th lines here. Note that if you added the dash lowercase f, the fragmentation of the data will be multiples of 16. In other words, the 24 bytes of the TCP header in this case would be divided over two IP fragments, the first containing 16 bytes and the second containing 8 bytes of the TCP header. On the other hand, if you prefer to increase the size of your packets to perform or to make them look more innocuous, you can use the following option here, which is dash dash data dash length num, where num specifies the number of bytes you want to append to your packets here. If the TCP segment has a size of 64 and the dash FF option is being used, how many IP fragments will you get? Now, this is going to be 4 because remember it's in multiples of 16. So 64 divided by 16 is going to be 4. Now let's continue on to task number 7, where we're going to talk about idle zombie scans. Spoofing the source IP address can be a great approach to scanning stealthily. However, spoofing will only work in specific network setups. It requires you to be in a position where you can monitor the traffic. Considering these limitations, spoofing your IP address can have little use. However, we can give it an upgrade with the idle scan. The idle scan or zombie scan requires an idle system connected to the network that you can communicate with. Practically, Nmap will make each probe appear as if it's coming from the idle zombie host. Then it will check for indicators whether the idle zombie host received any response to the spoofed probe. This is accomplished by checking the IP identification, IP ID value in the IP header. You can run an idle scan using the following here, where zombie IP is the IP address of the idle host, the zombie. The idle zombie scan requires the following 3 steps to discover whether a port is open. Number 1, trigger the idle host to respond so that you can record the current IP ID on the idle host. 2, send a SYN packet to a TCP port on the target. The packet should be spoofed to appear as if it is coming from the idle host zombie IP address. Number 3, trigger the idle machine again to respond so that you can compare the new IP ID with the one received earlier. Looks explained with figures. In figure below, we have the attacker system probing an idle machine, a multi-function printer. By sending a SYNAC, it responds with a reset packet containing its newly incremented IP ID, and that's what it looks like here. So the attacker system communicates with an idle system to find its current IP ID. The attacker will send a SYN packet to the TCP port they want to check on the target machine in the next step. However, the packet will use the idle host IP address at the source. 3 scenarios would arise. The first scenario, shown in the figure below, the TCP port is closed, therefore the target machine responds to the idle host with a reset packet. The idle host does not respond, hence its IP ID is not incremented, and that's what it looks like here. And the second scenario, as shown below, the TCP port is open, so the machine responds with a SYNAC to the idle host. The idle host responds to the unexpected packet with a reset packet, thus incrementing its IP ID. That's what it looks like here. In the third scenario, the target machine does not respond at all due to firewall rules. This lack of response will lead to the same result as the closed port. The idle host won't increase the IP ID. For the final step, the attacker sends another SYNAC to the idle host. The idle host responds with a reset packet, incrementing the IP ID once again, or by 1 again. The attacker needs to compare the IP ID of the reset packet received in the first step with the IP ID of the reset packet received in the third step. If the difference is 1, it means the port on the target machine was closed or filtered. However, if the difference is 2, it means that the port on the target was open. It is worth repeating that this scan is called an idle scan because choosing an idle host is indispensable for the accuracy of the scan. If the idle host is busy, all the return IP IDs would be useless. Okay, question time. If it says you discovered a rarely used network printer with the IP address of 10.10.5.5 and you decide to use it as a zombie in your idle scan, what argument would you add to your Nmap scan? And to do that, I'm just going to copy this real quick. Now to do that, if we scroll back up here, we can see that the argument we need is going to be this SI. So it should be looking like this here, SI. And there you go. Task number 8 here, getting more details. And let's see what they got for us. I'm going to terminate this machine here because it looks like we're going to have to start up another machine. So I'm going to start this one up. Getting more details. You might consider adding the dash dash reason if you want Nmap to provide more details regarding its reasoning and conclusions. Consider the 2 scans below to the system, however, the later adds dash dash reason, and that's what it looks like here for the initial scan. And then they add reason to it down here. Providing the dash dash reason flag gives us the explicit reason why Nmap concluded that the system is up or a particular port is open. In this console output above, we can see that this scan or the system is considered online because Nmap received an ARP response. On the other hand, we know that the SSH port is deemed to be open because Nmap sent a SYNAC packet back. You can see that here. For more detailed output, you can consider using the dash V for verbose output or dash VV for even more verbosity. And that's what it looks like here. Let's see here. The if dash VV does not satisfy your curiosity, you can use the dash D for debugging details or dash double D for even more details. You can guarantee that the dash D will create an output that extends beyond a single screen. Let's see, launch attack box, already done that. And wait for it to load completely. So we're going to launch this scan against it. Let me go ahead and clear all this stuff out of here. And here we go. It says, what is the reason provided for the stated ports being open? And the reason is going to be the synac. So if you copy this out of here and paste it over. And let's go ahead and wrap up this video with task number 9, summary. This room covered the following scan types, and that's what they look like here. We went over all of these in the room. So be sure to play around with these, memorize them, jot them down in your notes. You can use them for later if you need to. These scan types rely on setting TCP flags in unexpected ways to prompt ports for reply. Null, fin, and Xmas scan provoke a response from closed ports, while Maimon, ACK, and Windows scan provoke a response from open and closed ports. And here are the other options here. You got reason, -v, -vv, etc., etc. Ensure that you've taken note of the options explained in this room. And then the next one we're going to take a look at is going to be this Nmap post port scans room, and that wraps up this video. If you are new here, please consider hitting that subscribe button with the notification bell. Hit that like button if you're enjoying the content. Comment below your thoughts and opinions discussed in the video. As always, thank you all for watching. Have a nice day, and I will see you later. Hey everybody, this is WireDogSec. Just a quick reminder to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Once you hit the notification bell, be sure to set to all notifications so you know every time I post to the channel, upload a video, all that good stuff. Let's continue to grow our glorious community here. We are in the cyber trenches. We're not just reporting on it. Be sure to check out my channel as well. I have tons of videos. You can see here over 300 videos ready for you to check out and learn something from. Be sure to review my posts. I'm frequently posting new things to my channel here, including jobs and everything related to that. Also, I have tons of playlists here that you can review, make it more convenient for you. Anyway, happy defending, happy hacking, enjoy the video. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is WireDogSec, back with another video for you guys. Today's video, we are going to continue on inside of TryHackMe with the Junior Penetration Tester room. This is the network security module, and this is the Nmap post port scans room. Learn how to leverage Nmap for service and OS detection. Use Nmap scripting engine, NSE, and save the results. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Task 1, Introduction. This room is the last in the Nmap series, part of the Introduction to Network Security module. In this room, we focus on the steps that follow port scanning, in particular, service detection, OS detection, Nmap scripting engine, and saving the scan results. And here's our progress so far. The first one was the live host discovery, then we did basic port scans, and then we did advanced port scans, and now we're on post port scans. In the first room of the series, we have learned how Nmap can enumerate targets, discover live hosts, and use reverse DNS to find interesting names. The second and third rooms of the series focus on the basic and advanced types of scans for network ports. In the last room, as shown in the figure below, we focus on how Nmap can be used to detect versions of the running services on all open ports, detect OS based on any signs revealed by the target, run Nmap's traceroute, run select Nmap scripts, and save the scan results in various formats. Here's the steps 1 through 9 here. This room will focus on these steps and how to execute them after the port scan. Answer the questions. We already got the attack box started, and I went ahead and started up the target box as well. So task number 2, service detection. Once Nmap discovers open ports, you can probe the available port to detect the running service. Further investigation of open ports is an essential piece of information, as the penetration tester can use it to learn if there are any known vulnerabilities of the service. Join Vulnerabilities 101 to learn more about searching for vulnerable services. Adding SV to your Nmap command will collect and determine service and version information for the open ports. You can control the intensity with -- version intensity level, where the level ranges between 0 the lightest, to 9, the most complete. Dash 7V dash dash version light has an intensity of 2, while dash SV dash dash version all has an intensity of 9. It is important to note that using the dash SV will force Nmap to proceed with the TCP three-way handshake and establish the connection. The connection establishment is necessary because Nmap cannot discover the version without establishing a connection fully and communicating with the listening service. In other words, stealth send scan dash S big S is not possible when dash SV option is chosen. The console output below shows a simple Nmap stealth send scan with the dash SV option. Adding the dash SV option leads to a new column in the output showing the version of each detected service. For instance, in the case of TCP port 22 being open, instead of 22 TCP open SSH, we obtain 22 TCP open SSH, open SSH 6.7, yada yada yada. Notice that SSH protocol is guessed as the service because TCP port 22 is open. Nmap didn't need to connect to port 22 to confirm. However, -SV required connecting to this open port to grab the service banner and any version information it can get, such as Nginx 1.6.2. Hence, unlike the service column, the version column is not a guess. So if you go ahead and try this out, let's go ahead and copy and paste this over, and we should get similar results as that screenshot here. But this is what they're talking about here. As you can see, the version information. Says note that many Nmap options require root privileges unless you are running Nmap as root. You need to use sudo as an example below, or sorry, above. Start the VM once it's started. Open the terminal and attack box. Answer the questions below. And let's see what they have for us. Start the target machine for this task and launch this following commands against this machine. And what is the detected version for port 143? Well, let's go ahead and just do it their way. We can already see some information here, so let's just go ahead and clear this out and paste this over, and let's see what they have for us. The next question is asking about which service did not have a version detected with version light. All right, so it's going to be this dovecot imapd. So let's go ahead and copy this over, and it says which one wasn't detected with version light. So let's try to run that scan again because I did not see which one we're missing. But let's go ahead and compare them real quick once the scan finishes. Looks like RPC bind is what we're looking for here. That's the one that did not return with a version. As you can see, we have the two results compared next to each other. This is the one without using the version light. You can see RPC bind version information here, and then with the version light, we can see that there's nothing in this version column here. So let's go ahead and continue to task number 3, OS detection and trace route. OS detection. Nmap can detect the operating system, also known as the OS, based on its behavior and telltale signs and its responses. OS detection can be enabled using the -O. This is an uppercase O as in OS. In the example, we ran nmap-ss-o, and then the IP address on the attack box. Nmap detected the OS to be Linux 3.x, and then it guessed further that it was running kernel 3.3 or 3.13. Let's just go ahead and copy this over. Go ahead and run that. We should have similar results as soon as this scan finishes. And there we go. It thinks it's, yep, running Linux 3.x, and then OS details here, Linux 3.13. The system that we scanned and attempted to detect its OS version is running kernel version 3.16. Nmap was able to make a close guess in this case. In another case, we scanned a Fedora Linux system with kernel 5.13.14. However, Nmap detected it as Linux 2.6x. The good news is that Nmap detected the OS correctly. The not so good news is that the kernel version was wrong. The OS detection is very convenient, but many factors might affect its accuracy. First and foremost, Nmap needs to find at least one open port and one closed port on the target to make a reliable guess. Furthermore, the guessed OS fingerprints might get distorted due to the rising use of virtualization and similar techniques. Therefore, always take the OS version with a grain of salt and then traceroute. If you want Nmap to find the route between your target, just add -- traceroute. In the following example, Nmap appended a traceroute to its scan results. Note that Nmap's traceroute works slightly different than the traceroute command found on Linux and Mac OS, or tracert found on MS Windows. Standard traceroute starts with a packet of low TTL, which is time to live, and keeps increasing until it reaches the target. Nmap's traceroute starts with a packet of high TTL and keeps decreasing it. In the following example, we executed nmap-ss trace routes to the IP address on the attack box. We can see that there are no routers or hops between the two as they are connected directly. So let's go ahead and clear this out and copy and paste and run it. And we should have similar results as the screenshot here. And we do. There's one. We got one for the hop. It is worth noting that many routers are configured not to send ICMP time to live exceeded, which would prevent us from discovering their IP addresses. For more information, visit the active reconnaissance room. So check that out if you haven't done so already, or check out my video over it. And answer the questions. Run nmap with -O option against the following IP address. What OS did nmap detect? Yes, we have Linux. So let's go ahead and continue on to task number 4 here. And before we get into it, I'm going to just go ahead and terminate this machine. Nmap Scripting Engine, NSE. A script is a piece of code that does not need to be compiled. In other words, it remains in its original human-readable form and does not need to be converted to machine language. Many programs provide additional functionality via scripts. Moreover, scripts make it possible to add custom functionality that did not exist via the built-in commands. Similarly, Nmap provides support for scripts using the Lua language. A part of Nmap Scripting Engine, NSE, is a Lua interpreter that allows Nmap to execute Nmap scripts written in Lua language. However, we don't need to learn Lua to make use of Nmap scripts. Your Nmap default installation can easily contain close to 600 scripts. Take a look at your Nmap installation folder on the attack box. Check the files at user share nmap scripts, and you will notice that there are hundreds of scripts conveniently named, starting with the protocol they target. We listed all the scripts starting with HTTP on the attack box. In the console output below, we found around 130 scripts with the HTTP. With future updates, you can only expect the number of installed scripts to increase, and that's what that looks like here. So if you're wondering how to search for particular scripts, right, you can try to use something like this. So I'm not going to do it on my machine here, but this is what an example looks like. You can specify to use any or a group of these installed scripts. Moreover, you can install other user scripts and use them for your scans. Let's begin with the default scripts. You can choose to run scripts in the default category using the -- script equals default, or simply adding the --C. In addition to default, categories include auth, broadcast, root, default, discovery, DOS, exploit, etc., etc. You can see the rest there. A brief description is shown in the following table here, and this is what they look like here. I'm not going to read through all these, so be sure to pause the video and check those out. Some scripts belong to more than one category. Moreover, some scripts launch brute force attacks against services, while others launch DOS attacks and exploit systems. Hence, it is crucial to be careful when selecting scripts to run if you don't want to crash services or exploit them. We'll use nmap to run a send scan against the IP address and execute the default scripts in the console shown below. The command is the following here. This is what it looks like here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. And it says where --C will ensure that nmap will execute the default scripts, allowing the send scan or following the send scan. There are a few details that appear below. Take a look at SSH servers on port 22. Nmap recovered all 4 public keys related to the running server. Consider another example, the HTTP service at port 80. Nmap retrieved the default page title. We can see the page has been left as the default, right? So we have similar results as they're talking about here. You can also specify the script by using the -- script, and then inside of double quotes, the script name. or a pattern such as dash dash script and then in double quotes FTP asterisk, which would include FTP dash brute force. If you are unsure what a script does, you can open the script file with a text header, or sorry, text reader such as less or text editor. In the case of FTP-brute, it states performs brute force password auditing against FTP servers. You have to be careful as some scripts are pretty intrusive. Moreover, some scripts might be for a specific server and if chosen at random will waste your time with no benefit. As usual, make sure that you are authorized to launch such tests on the target server. Let's consider a benign script, http-date, which we guess would retrieve the HTTP server date and time. And this is indeed confirmed in the description. Get the date from HTTP-like services. Also, it prints how much the dates differs from local time. On the attack box, we execute the following here. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to copy and paste this over. And we should have similar results as that screenshot there. So clear all this stuff out, and then we're going to paste and let it run. Finally, you might expand the functionality of Nmap beyond the official Nmap scripts. You can write your script or download Nmap scripts from the internet. Downloading and using a Nmap script from the internet holds a certain level of risk, so it is a good idea not to run a script from an author you don't trust. And we do have similar results here, and that's absolutely true. As with any other things you get off of the internet, be sure you're using trusted sources and you know what you're doing. All right, so question time. Knowing that Nmap scripts are saved in user share Nmap scripts on the attack box, what does the script http robots.txt use? Hey everybody, just a quick little blurb here. As you can see here, most people that view my channel are not subscribers. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you're enjoying the video, please consider hitting the like button. It helps get me in the algorithm, helps spread the good word out there, helps bring more people and increase our glorious community here. All right, I'm all about helping out others. I know what it's like to come up in cybersecurity or even try to get into cybersecurity and not knowing where to look. I'm just having this channel up so I can help out other people. All right, that's all I got. And what we're looking for here is you're going to navigate to that appropriate directory where the scripts are located, right? And you're going to cat out that particular script, right? And I catted it out and I'm piping it into less. So if you do that, you can go through and analyze the information here, and you can see that disallowed entries is what we're looking for here. And once you do that, you can hit Q to exit out of there. And the next one is asking about what script checks for this particular vulnerability here. And the way I did that here is all I did was to do a ls http and then a star at the end, so you can pull up everything referencing http. And as you're going through here, you can see the CVE numbers, and you'll come across that particular CVE in question, which is these 2015-1635, and that's what we are looking for here, like so. I have it highlighted. Now, the next one, we have to do some actual scanning, which I've already done. This should save on time. Okay. Now, this one that we're looking for right now is port 53, and we want to understand what um, service listening on that port. So if we analyze our results here, we can see that it's this here, this bind.version, and then 9.9, yada, yada, yada. So that's what we're looking for here. You can do it without the dash P53, but this just makes things easier because that's what they want us to look for, right? So why not just type that in there for that specific port? We're not getting all this other extra junk in there. Now this next one here, we're looking for this particular algorithm information, and we're going to run this script, and I went ahead and ran that as well. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit, and this is what my information looks like here. Dash dash script equals the name of the script and then the target of the IP address in question. And if we scroll down a little bit, we can see the information we're looking for here, which is going to be this right here, this Diffie-Hellman group 14 SHA-1. Now let's go ahead and continue on. So I'm going to scroll up and kill this machine here. That's task 5, saving the output. Now as we're reading through here, I'm going to go ahead and start this machine up so we can get everything ready to go. Whenever you run a Nmap scan, it is only reasonable to save the results in a file. Selecting and adopting a good naming convention for your file name is also crucial. The number of files can grow quickly and hinder your ability to find a previous scan result. The three main formats are number one, normal, two, greppable, and three, XML. There is a fourth one that we cannot recommend, Script Kiddie. Okay, we're going to talk about normal ones. As the name implies, the normal format is similar to the output you get on the screen when scanning a target. You can save your scan in normal format by using the dash little o capital N and the name of the file. N stands for normal. Here is an example of the results. So they went ahead and catted that particular machine IP dash nmap. So that's the name of their file, right? And it looks like okay, it looks like everything's populating finally. Okay, so this is their scan result in that file, right, that they catted, and it's got everything in here, right? You got the commands that they used and the applicable results of the information, right, from the scans. Now let's go ahead and continue on to greppable. Greppable format has its name from the command grep. Grep stands for Global Regular Expression Printer. In simple terms, it makes filtering the scan output for specific keywords or terms efficient. You can save the scan result in greppable format by using the dash little o capital G and then the file name. The scan output displayed above is normal format is shown in the console below using grepl format. The normal output is 21 lines, however, the grepl format is only 4 lines. The main reason is that Nmap wants to make each line meaningful and complete when the user applies grep. As a result, the grepl outputs, the lines are so long and are not convenient to read compared to normal output, and that's what it looks like here. An example use of grep is grep, and then the keyword, and then text file, or the file. This command will display all the lines containing the provided keyword. Let's compare the output of using grep on normal output and grep output. You will notice that the former does not provide the IP address of the host. Instead, it returned 80 TCP open HTTP yada yada, making it very inconvenient if you are sifting through the scan results of multiple systems. However, the later provides enough information, such as the host IP address in each line, to make it complete, and that's what it looks like here. All right, so XML. Third format is XML. You can save the scan results in XML using the dash little capital X, then the name of the file. The XML format would be most convenient to process the output in other programs. Conveniently enough, you can save the scan output in all three formats using the dash little o capital A, the name of the file, to combine all three together, right? For normal, grepl, and XML, and script kiddie. A fourth format is script kiddie. You can see that this form is useless if you want to search the output for any interesting keywords or keep the results for future reference. However, you can use it to save the output in the Nmap scan, and this is what it looks like here. Display the output file name and look, I guess that's supposed to be elite, in front of friends who are not tech savvy. And this is what it looks like here. Okay, you can see that's a bunch of gobbledygook in this. It looks crazy. And question time. I've already terminated the machine, so if you haven't terminated the machine before in the previous task, be sure to do so. All right, and then start up this one. On the attack terminal, issue the command scp yada yada yada. So I'm going to copy and paste. It says to download the Nmap reports in normal and grepl formats from the target virtual machine. Note that the username Pentester has the password of the following here. Check the attached Nmap logs. How many systems are listening on the HTTPS port? So I'm just going to open up a new tab here and paste this over. Actually, let's cd into our home directory and clear all this stuff out. Now let's go ahead and get these reports here. I'm going to say yes. All right, there we go. All right, so we need to find the HTTPS port. What is the IP address of the system listening on port 8089? So let's go ahead and try that. So what I did was I catted out this particular file, the .nmap file, right? I piped it into grep, and then this is what I was looking for, HTTPS. Hit enter, and it should come up with showing that there's 3 in here. And this last one here is a similar one, except we're going to use the other file, which is the G Nmap one. All right, we're going to cat that file, and then we're going to pipe it into grep, and then we're going to search for 8089, so hit enter, and then you'll get the IP address of the host. So let's go ahead and close out this video with task number 6, summary. In this room, we learn how to detect the running services and their versions along with the host operating system. We learn how to enable traceroute, and we covered selecting one or more scripts to aid in penetration testing. Finally, we covered the different formats to save the scan results for future reference. The table below summarizes the most important options we covered in this room. And I'm not going to go over all of this, but be sure to pause the video and read through this. -SV, meaning determined, service slash version, info on open ports, and then version light, try the most likely probes, version all, try all available probes, dash capital O, detect OS, and you can see the rest there. And that concludes the series of Nmap Rooms and this video. If you are new here, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. Hit that like button if you're enjoying the content. Comment below your thoughts and opinions. As always, thank you all for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you later.